Hello. Hi, Rakesh. Thank you very much for joining me today on this episode of the Power Pulse podcast. I'm delighted to have you here. You've just flown in from India, right? Late last night?
Yes.
Yeah.
And thank you for having me here, Barbara.
Thank you so much. So India, one of the most wonderful, vibrant places on earth, home to well over 1 billion people, 1.4. 1.4, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
In my view, with the best food in the world. I mean, your cuisine is just extraordinary.
Really?
Isn't it? Yes, absolutely.
Nice to know this.
Yes, absolutely. And also a very spiritual home, 22 official languages. So there's a lot to talk about when it comes to India, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Rakesh, before we start talking about the energy landscape in India, with every guest we've had on the podcast, we always start by telling our listeners a little bit of something personal about them. I've heard that you used to suffer quite badly from vertigo. That's something that you overcame. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about it?
Yes, you have heard it correctly. Until 17 years back, I was suffering a lot. And we were in an amusement park, me and my wife. And my wife is actually an adventurous person. Mm-hmm. So she challenged me to do a free fall ride, what you call a drop tower.
Oh, gosh.
And when a wife challenges you and you have been recently married, sometimes you take those challenges. So I took that challenge and I did it. And then I found that, it looks very interesting. And probably it changed my whole perception of the feeling of that. And after that, I did quite number of paragliding, parasailing.
Oh, wow. You went to the other extreme.
Yes. And very recently, I did river rafting in Himalayas, 20-kilometer long river rafting. That was very steep.
And your wife joins you in
Yes.
Okay. She's also fearless.
Yeah. That's where it came.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. That's something to be very proud of. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
So shall we get started and talk about the energy landscape in India? Will you tell us a little bit? Would you paint a picture for us? What is happening in India right now?
As you know, India is 5th largest economy in the world. 3rd highest installed base in the world, 460 gigawatt. And around 53% of that is still with fossil fuel. And 47% is with renewable. India plans to go to 30% in next 5 years on the fossil. So reducing the fossil from 53% to 30%. And the plan is to add 40 gigawatt every year and achieve 500 gigawatt of renewable by 2030. Huge plans. And we see, when you see what has been added in reality, if not 40, but they have already clocked probably 25 or something. And the next years are going to be more intense. We see that the sourcing side decarbonization is progressing in a very strong way. The power consumption in India is growing at a rate of 9.6 to 10% every year. So that's a very, very strong increase. On one hand, the utilities have to feed this new demand, and then they have to also think about the decarbonization of the electricity, which is coming to our homes and offices and other things. 1/3 of this would be fed to the data centers and the transport sector by 2030. So even today, you see with a lot of industrial growth happening in India, the requirement of power is high. The data centers are also driving the demand. And then on top of that, this decarbonization goal. So landscape-wise, it's really changing very, very fast.
So it's growing considerably, as you mentioned.
Yes, yeah.
Are there any obstacles, or let's call them challenges, that the country might be facing in terms of achieving a more sustainable energy system? And how is coal a part of that? How does it impact the energy transition?
Yeah, good question, Barbara. Coal is definitely one of the challenges. As I told, that India is not having the gas. But when you go to a renewable, you need an intermediate source to basically jump from, let's say, coal or fossil fuel to the next level. So that intermediate source for India cannot be gas. So India has to have either battery, or let's say hydrogen is being talked, or also the hydro storage. So these are the solutions on which India is working, because in renewable until 30-35% the grid is manageable. But once it increases beyond that, you need something to store that energy. So for the transition,
how are you doing it?
So, the utilities in India have different strategy. Majority of them I see are working either on battery or hydro storage as the intermediate source.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for setting the scene for us. Last year, I know that Hitachi Energy celebrated 75 years of operations in India. And I was actually very lucky to be there and be part of the celebrations, which was just a phenomenal experience. We have plenty of local partnerships. We've contributed and supported the India's grid development over these past 75 years. But I'd really love to hear from you, from your experience of the initiatives that you have taken on and your experience in the company. You've been working for Hitachi Energy for how long now?
22 years.
22 years, 22
yes. Years,
so yes. You've got plenty to share, I'm sure.
Yeah. So Hitachi Energy in India has roots 75 years back, as you rightly told. We had an incredible year celebrating it, and we also had a big event in New Delhi. We called it ETW 75. So Hitachi Energy started working in India since 1949, under, of course, different names. And the whole electrical landscape of India has a lot of contribution from Hitachi Energy. We were the first to supply the 400 kV systems in India, also the 800 kV systems in India, the HVDCs, even the powering of the metros, the power quality solutions. So we have been contributing very strongly in all these 75 years. So this event which I'm talking, which happened in October 2024, it was attended by 1,800 top customers, policymakers, regulators, even media journalists who cover the energy landscape, the academia. So it was a very, very strong partnership by everyone to come together, celebrate, and also look to the futuristic solutions which we as Hitachi Energy are going to deliver. We showcased our first iconic product in India there.
Okay. Yeah.
So the 400 kV iconic GIS Bay was on display.
Yeah.
And I must tell you that it got a lot of interest, enormous interest. And, bringing something physically and showing to the people, and then people understand that are we talking the same solution with having the same reliability, same scalability with something which is going to decarbonize the switchgear. So
you're saying, do you think perhaps India might be ready sooner than we thought to embrace SF6-free switchgear?
I personally think, probably my definition of soon could be different. But if you look at the decarbonization commitment of India, the commitment from the government of India is 2070. But let's not forget that the electrical infrastructure which we build, they are generally having a life of 30, 35 or 40 years. And a lot of the infrastructure is already aging.
Yeah.
So that means once you either replace or you add. So what you add, that is also going to be with you for another 35, 40 years. So this is the right time for India to start working on the decarbonization of the switchgears and the solutions which we have already brought. We are the first, but of course it has excited the whole industry that it is possible to bring the same reliability and scalability.
Are you able to comment on whether it is likely for there to be a regulation in terms of F-gases like, last year was passed in the EU? Is that something that India is looking into?
Yes, last few months we have been meeting a lot of government departments, the regulators or the policymakers. And what they explained to us that so far the agencies were focusing on the decarbonization from the source side, the direct source side, that is the power and the transport. And they make a 5-year plan. So the next 5-year plan, which they are going to make in this year, they are now going to look at what they call the secondary emissions, like this gases in the switchgear and others. So from that perspective, this is something which is definitely coming. Yeah, in SF6, what is important for India is that we start having the right regulatory framework to monitor it and put some kind of restriction, commercial or financial or contractual. That would be the first thing which I am expecting that it will come very soon. And then the switch over to the sustainable solutions on the switchgear should follow.
Right. We'll get a bit more in depth into sustainable switchgear in a bit. But for now, if we can sort of just go back a little bit, we were talking about Hitachi Energy 75 years in India, and you've been in the company for 22. Would you tell us a little bit more about how our factories in high voltage are organized in India? And I suppose you head up a region, so your remit is not necessarily just India. You've got plenty of other countries that you look after. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, thanks for bringing this, Barbara, because of course, India is one of our most
Did you promise any shout-outs? You did promise some shout-outs, didn't you?
Yes. So I will start with the other countries first.
Okay.
So we have the factories starting from Australia, which is for power quality solutions. Then we have a factory in Thailand for power quality solutions. Then we have a factory in Indonesia. That's for the switchgear instrument transformers. And we have one of our biggest fitter factories in Vietnam. And then in India, we have switchgear factories for AIS and GIS. We have a big power quality factory in Bangalore. And then we also have factories for instrument transformers and disconnectors. So we have a more or less a very strong portfolio of HV already in our South Asia region.
Do you know how many people you employ, roughly?
Somewhere around 2,000.
2,000,
okay. Yes.
Okay, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I'd be interested to hear about your recruitment initiative. So I know that you're in the region, you're very strong in trying to attract young female talent to come and work in STEM. Can you tell us a little bit about those initiatives and how you've gone about it, what partnerships you've set up locally, and how you're making it happen, how you're making our energy world accessible to everyone who would want to give it a go?
Before I tell it, I just wanted to let you know that I am personally a strong advocate of diversity. When I tell diversity, it's a diversity of the gender, also the region, and the ethnicity. Because, we all carry some kind of stereotype mindset. And this is the fastest and easiest way to kill that stereotype mindset and really bring the wonders for our organization. So if you are asking about our region, of course, we have put around 32 to 40% new recruitments with the diverse gender. And even in India, this was close to 32% in last 3-4 quarters. And one of the biggest support which we have got through a partnership with a firm who actually go to very remote places mostly in northeast part of India.
Right.
And they pick up aspiring young girls who really want to make a career in STEM.
Okay.
So we recruited 15 of them for our power quality factory in Bangalore.
Okay.
And we have been adding similar kind of resources in our feeder factories, in our switchgear factories in last 1 or 2 years or even before. So all in all, this has been a very, very exciting journey. When I talk to the people in the shop floor, they feel so happy that the whole environment in the shop floors have changed. Yeah. We have probably become very productive. Yeah. We have become
absolutely
very organized, so we are bringing all the strength which these women bring.
Amazing.
So
they've got a career path within the company. They join straight out of school, perhaps, and they sort of join. It's sort of an apprenticeship program. Yes. Would you call it that?
Yeah. So 2 years they are on an apprenticeship, and then we also offer many of them a permanent role, depending on how the things move forward from there.
Yeah.
But having said that, we also have very strong additions in our white collar, or let's say in our core engineering field, where the graduates or the postgraduates have been also joining us in engineering, production, in other fields. And we as a company in Hitachi Energy, we have a program wherein universities, we go and finance some underprivileged girls for their education.
Okay.
And that's where we bring a connection with them right from the beginning when they start their educational journey. And many of them have been also joining us. And the kind of close relationship you bring there, that has been really helping us also to improve our diverse presence in the offices, in engineering, project management, and all other areas.
So this new younger generation is now being a part of making sustainable switchgear more readily available for the world, for India. We know, and we've spoken at length about it in other episodes, and we talk about it in the industry on a daily basis. That's why we're here. The world needs to phase out SF6. So governments are getting involved. They're putting a stop to it, as they should, as rightly so. It is the most potent greenhouse gas used in high voltage. And India ranks third in the overall top greenhouse gas emitters, right? Follows China and the US. Do you think India is going at the right pace in terms of adopting SF6-free technologies? And I know you've touched on it earlier on a little bit, so I'd like you to delve a little bit more into it. Explain to us the intricacies of what it would take for the Indian grid to be SF6-free.
It has to start with basically putting a system of monitoring the SF6 uses and its leakage. And I think we are very close to that because the authorities or the regulators or the utilities, they are very serious about this, and we expect that there will be regulations first to put a proper mechanism to keep track of the SF6 uses. And secondly, for non-SF6, I mean, we have to understand that in India, the growth of the power consumption itself is close to 10% year on year. So India has to build the infrastructure much faster than probably other parts of the world to cope up with the growth requirements. And mixing it with switchgear or SF6 free switchgear is something which is a challenge for India in terms of the budgets or also the supply constraints. It's not an easy answer which we can basically develop in a few days or few months. What is important for India is to do some pilots to learn this technology. And once you learn the technology, then you also create the scalability.
So Rakesh, you work very closely with your customers. So you must have a very good idea on what they perceive their role to be on the road to SF6 free. How do you think they will make it happen for India? What are their priorities?
Thanks, Barbara. The question is very relevant because the first part of your question asked that, are they aware that this is the solution? And the second is, are they willing to accept this solution? So yes, our customers have seen the solutions and they are excited about it. They accept it and they understand that it's really good that we have demonstrated the solution at some of the highest voltages and to be able to deliver the same reliability of an SF6.
So they embody that social responsibility. They must help the country transition.
Yes. Yeah. So the point is that when they do it, when they start doing it, so it starts with doing the pilot. We are already working on few pilots with the customers, and that's where they will probably get more understanding and experience and exposure to this product. And the second is when they put on the commercial operation of this technology. And that's where I see that it would be a journey. My personal guess could be maybe 5 years, 7 years from now to basically put it on 100% kind of commercial scale. India is a value-driven market. So the customers will expect that we have the localization in India. They will also expect that we have the right ecosystem to adopt to this. And when I talk of the ecosystem, the cost of the solution is always very important for the Indian customers. And they know it that to bring the required reliability and to be able to meet the net zero commitments, this has to be anyway done. It's only about the point at which they see that they are able to meet the requirements of the net zero. So far, they had all the things like changing the energy mix. But once this target is more or less 50-60% over, they have to switch to the non-SF6 switchgear as well.
So you're very optimistic.
Yes, I am.
I've got one last question for you. The country needs more transmission lines, right? So it's a bit of a toss-up. Should the country invest in sustainable solutions or focus on those transmission lines? It's a bit of a challenge. How do you decide which one to go for?
I mean, both are priorities. Adding the transmission line or the transmission systems is need of the hour to cater to the energy demand. But also to make the grid or decarbonize the grid is a commitment which to our generation, to our children, to our society. And we see that the government understands it and the utilities also understands it. So I don't think they are conflicting with each other. Yes, of course, India has some challenge of high T&D losses and also the challenge on the so-called cost sensitivity or value sensitivity. But I think they will go hand in hand because the same customers, the same utilities also understand that they have to decarbonize the grid before the deadline which has been accepted. And our equipment have a lifetime associated with that. So that means they would not like to invest in something which is no more meeting the decarbonization goals. So this is hand on hand. Of course, the budgeting constraints can be met through optimizing the T&D costs or also making the grid more reliable and more secure. So they know it that of course it's about changing the priorities and changing the gear. But also there are solutions that how can we basically finance both these requirements.
Well, thank you very much for coming in today, Rakesh. It's been wonderful speaking with you about India. And I hope to see you soon again on the podcast.
Thank you, Barbara. It was very nice talking to you. And thanks to our listeners as well. Thank you.
Thank you.